Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My last video we talked about pretend play and imaginative play in the Montessori environment, and today we're really going to hone in on creativity and what that looks like in the Montessori environment. Perhaps the biggest criticism I see online towards Montessori is the lack of creativity that it allows the child, and I really want to challenge that perception. If you've had the pleasure of seeing a Montessori classroom, it's incredibly orderly, and amazingly so, it remains orderly even with children in the environment. And so if you enter this class that is very neat and organized, and there's children in it, and they're focused, they're concentrated, and it's pretty quiet, it can be easy to assume that they're probably not being creative at all and they're being forced to do some kind of really boring work, and that's why it's so quiet. When in reality, they're so incredibly focused on the things that they want to be doing, which is why it's a very orderly and peaceful environment. Talked about on my channel before that children have a great sense of order. That's what they strive for, and that's where a lot of tantrums come from, when we disrupt their sense of order as adults. Children crave consistency and knowing what to expect. And so that is why the Montessori environment is so neat and orderly. Everything has a place, and a place for everything, because this really feeds into the child's innate sense of order, also allows them to have that freedom to be creative. They're not having to worry about the fact that everything looks different from how it looked yesterday and having to find where that one red block went. Instead, they know where everything is, and their creativity can take control. Another misconception is that children are only allowed to work with one material and only work with it one specific way, which also would be squashing their creativity, which again is not true. A lot of materials are actually intended to be used together in creative ways. A classic example is the brown stairs and pink tower. They make wonderful extensions together. If the child wants to take 2 or 3 different materials and make their own discovery with them, again, as long as they're not disruptive, destructive, or disrespectful, it is absolutely allowed in the Montessori class. The child is making their own discoveries in their own way. And what better way to follow the child than to observe what they're doing with these materials to understand what it is that they're craving to learn and discover. I'm going to show on the screen some examples of the creative ways the children are able to use their Montessori materials in the classroom. This child, for example, is working with the metal insets, which practice pre-writing skills and allowed the child to get familiar with geometric shapes. But then the teacher took it a step further and modeled creating a picture out of the shape the child just traced. And so with the basic knowledge of how to use this material, as well as the inspiration the teacher presented, the child was able to utilize their creativity to create these Christmas pictures. But we need to give the child something to work with, something for them to express their creativity with. Here's a very different example. After working with the teen board, which allows the child to understand that a number like 15 is made out of 1 10 unit and 5 single units, the child was inspired to create a poster where they not only showcase the different beads that are used to create these units, but also the summation equations that we use to get to them. So the Montessori materials allowed the child to grasp that concept, and they brought those 2 concepts together and presented them in a visual way. Over in the language area, a child had a presentation about what a noun is, that it's a name, a place, or a thing. And the child decided to create a table that gave an example for each type of noun for every single letter of the alphabet. Here we've got a child that just learned the names of fruits in Spanish and wanted to draw them out and label them all, whereas this child learned about sea creatures and again wanted to draw them, label them, but also write out a single fact that they learned about each and every sea creature. And this is a child's artistic take of the solar system that they created after having presentations, working with books, working with puzzles, all different materials that allowed them to grasp what the solar system is. And then they headed over to the art area where they used a variety of mediums and materials to create the solar system, make this comets, stars, moons. They got really creative, but they could only do so after being presented with materials that explained to them what the solar system even is. And of course, by having a prepared environment that also gave them access to all of these art materials. This is the constructive triangle box, which I think you can already see lends itself to a lot of creative pattern making anyway. But this child took it a step further to create this beautifully patterned drawing, which is honestly not far off from the things that I worked on in AP art over in high school. But again, this creativity can only exist after we have first introduced the basic concepts to the child and also modeled for them the different ways that they're able to utilize their materials. After that, they're able to go ahead and combine materials in different ways and get very creative with them. Another misconception is that there is no art or color or any kind of art form in a Montessori environment because it doesn't look as brightly colorful as some of the other schools like a Waldorf environment does. And while yes, the colors are much more muted in a Montessori environment, there is an entire art area in the Montessori classroom where children can freely explore different mediums of art and really create what they would like to create. There is also a chance for music and movement within the Montessori classroom. Not only is the Montessori class presenting the child with different versions of art forms, they're usually presenting them at a much deeper level than a traditional preschool or daycare would. Not only are they listening to classical music or children's songs, They may also be listening to music from different cultures. They may be learning dances from different cultures. They may be learning who composed the songs. They may be doing some kind of 3-part cards about that. They are learning these things at a much deeper level if they choose to do so. I'm sure you've noticed when a child wants to know something, when they really want to know something, they will learn everything and anything there is to learn about it. And the Montessori environment is really set up to spark that interest by presenting these things in a beautiful way and allowing the child to have multiple different ways to explore it further. I think it'd be hard to say that it's squashing creativity by allowing the child to explore these beautiful art forms in so many different ways. Another argument is the fact that there's a very specific way that the Montessori teachers, also known as guides, present activities to children. They have very specific steps that they follow when presenting an activity, and so it seems that there's only one specific way to do this activity. That's not exactly it. These presentations are made to be logical and easy to follow for the child, and also think through every single step of the way that the child would need to know. So while for us, wiping the table is as simple as wiping the table, for a child, there's a lot of other steps involved, such as finding where the sponge is, going to the sink to wet the sponge, bringing the sponge over to the table, finding where to start wiping the table, and so on. These are steps that are so incredibly easy for us that we don't even think about them as adults. But for a child, these are all steps they need to think through. And so when a Montessori teacher is presenting this activity, they are doing so with that understanding and allowing the child a chance to succeed in this activity. But if the child chooses to wipe the table in a different direction from how the teacher showed them, that's not the wrong way to do an activity. That is simply the child doing it the way that they understood to do it. As adults, we get really boxed in with what creativity means, and we're imagining something akin to a piece of art. But creativity also comes from creative problem solving. In the Montessori environment, the prepared environment and the prepared adult are set up in a way that allows for the child to have creative problem solving. They're able to independently explore and make their own discoveries, and if they run into a problem, they have all the tools necessary to creatively solve that problem. And if they can't find that solution on their own, the guide, be it the parent or the teacher, will typically not simply provide them with the answer. They will instead ask questions that will allow the child to, again, make that creative problem-solving discovery on their own. The Montessori environment really fosters the child's ability to become creative problem solvers. And that is a skill that they will take beyond the classroom into the rest of their lives. I cannot stress enough how creative the Montessori environment really allows the child to be. As the adults, we take a step back and really allow that creativity and imagination from them to shine through. We present them with all the tools and the skills necessary to either explore art or music or movement, or explore creative problem solving. Whichever version of creativity the child wants to discover, we have prepared their environment in a way that allows them to do so. By observing the child, we're able to continuously provide them with additional resources to really foster their creativity. If you have other questions or misunderstandings of creativity in the Montessori environment, please let me know down below, because I do not want anyone for 1 second to think that there is no creativity in the Montessori environment, because it couldn't be further from the truth. And as always, until next time, I hope you stay safe.